Right. Sit slightly forward on your chair if you can be comfortable like that for a few moments. Obviously, as always, I don't want you to sort of strain to be there. It can be a good way of just reminding ourselves that we can be supported without sort of external means. But obviously, we're sitting on the chair, but our feet and legs are part of the support, back supporting the front of the body. And I think significantly, just just reminding ourselves again that we are supported from inside. So, if for instance you get that feeling of releasing in your shoulders and your upper back, you still have a chest cavity because your rib cage maintains that space. And feeling that your hips are sinking down back into the chair again with that releasing feeling. One of my teachers once described it as though you're hanging a coat from a hook. But for me, there's a bit more shape there. And so the image I sometimes have is of a mannequin, a dummy in a shop window with a shirt or coat or whatever draped around it. And it has a shape, not because it's stiff and hard, presumably, but because the mannequin itself has that shape. We want to keep coming back to that idea so that we begin to gain some level of confidence in this. And the more we're confident in that happening, in maintaining that shape, in not just collapsing, the more we're likely to be able to come back to it and to make use of it. Now, rubbing your hands together, tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Onto one shoulder, your arm. The other side. Onto your chest. And then and sit back in your chair. And here we do feel the value of a kind of support for quite a lot of the body. Because you could do the same thing lying on the floor or on a bed or something like that. That when we feel supported, then releasing tightness and stiffness in the body comes more easily. Doesn't just mean that all the tight areas magically dissolve, unfortunately. Nice if they did. But at least it's a starting point, and as I said earlier, something we can come back to. You may find yourself just, just in your daily life, sitting in a chair, reading a book, or talking to somebody, or something like that, and realise that you kind of tightened up in the shoulder. There's no need for that, but often those are old habits from the past for one reason or another. They're not just going to magically disappear, but we keep coming back to this posture that we use in Tai Chi, this supported posture, and we keep reminding ourselves to release that shoulder or whatever it happens to be. And gradually that old habit is overtaken, as it were, by the new habit of releasing. It can be helpful too to notice any significant changes from the upright position to the reclining position. Is there a change in the breathing, for instance, or is there a change in that tight shoulder, and so on and so forth? Those are things that, again, we can refer back to when we come back to the upright postures. Now, your feet in. Come back to the upright position. And this time you may want to sit a little bit further back. It's all very well for me to talk about the support that we actually get, but it's a change in our posture that requires a change in muscles and tendons and ligaments in particular. And that means that there's a process of conditioning or reconditioning, perhaps is a better way of thinking of it. There's nothing to be gained by sitting there beyond the point where it starts to sort of hurt, beyond the point where it starts to become uncomfortable. It's practice and regular practice that over a period of time will actually help us to achieve the required conditioning. If you are forwards, then you're more likely to be aware of how your feet are also supporting you. If I sit like this, I was going to say, if I pick my feet up, it's quite difficult to persuade my body that it's okay to lift my feet up, because I'm just going to tumble forward. If I lift one foot up, I'm sort of stumbling that way, and that's significant because it brings our attention to our feet, and it's just as I've said before, this is one of those areas easily lost. So in this basic posture, just going through the various parts of the body, starting with the head turning very gently. So part of what we want to try and do is to practice to have this conditioning process working for us until our body is able to maintain the appropriate postures, do the appropriate movements, without the feeling that we're right at the limit of our physical capabilities. When that happens, we tend to stiffen up. A muscle that is under strain is a stiff muscle. So we want to be able to sort of coast along in terms of the conditioning, some of the time at least, and that helps to create the space for movement within our body. And then hands in front of your shoulders, circling around, feeling the movement in your upper back and your chest and the sides of your body. And then going forwards, hands to your sides and rotate. And raising your hands like you're winding up cotton, or because the traditional image here would be silk thread. Nice and smooth, trying to maintain a consistent sort of range and, as you call it, the pace of the movement, the smooth, connected movement through your arms into your shoulders and back the other way. That's your hand. You need to transfer your weight, easing forward so more of your weight goes into your feet, and then a gentle push back. You come back to a more upright position, sinking into your hips, and then from there a gentle push back. And one way of looking at this is that as we sink into our hips, as we sink into our feet, that whole area, legs and feet, and then sort of lower back, hips, buttocks, is slightly compressed. So if you could imagine doing this on a sort of like one, maybe one of these inflatable chairs that you get, the very act of allowing yourself to sink down provides the basis for the push back. So a very strong focus of attention on the releasing, sinking feeling, waiting in a way for the movement back. So what we get is a dynamic movement from feet to hips, from hips to feet, like a wave moving through our body. And that's a very important, a very prime source of movement, of energy. We're yielding to the pull of gravity, allowing our legs to be compressed, but also noticing the point at which our legs respond by expanding. In one way or another, this is a consistent movement. What we're doing at the moment is alternating between feet and hips. But in a lot of the movements that we do, it's both at the same time. But whether it's alternating or whether it's both, it remains one of the key dynamics in Tai Chi. If we turn in the center of our body, we learn that we can begin to direct, to shape, if you like, that dynamic. We turn towards one leg, and that means that our weight is moving more on a diagonal from, in this case, my right hip is the one on your left, to this one, which is to the foot on the right. And if I turn towards my other foot, the one on your left, then that changes the diagonal. Then if we start to move in a slight circle in the center of our body, that area, pelvis, hips, waist, we start to feel up the focus of our weight moving around in the circle, and our head and shoulders follow that. And if I change that direction, my intention, if you like, is think of it as an instruction to the center of my body, go the other way, and everything follows on from that. So we also begin to appreciate the significance of this central area in terms of the focus of our attention and the way it connects to all parts of our body. It's often described as being like the hub of the wheel. coming back to the central position, and then step out with one foot. You could take that idea of the significance of the center of your body just a little bit further by imagining that what's happening here is your foot is withdrawing to the center. Again, the leg gets slightly compressed and then pushes away, expanding, and again contracting, expanding. These things are common to all of the movements in one way or another, not necessarily in the same way, but the feeling of these movements, the quality of these movements becomes very familiar in a variety of contexts. And then on the other side. So these are all movements, these are all principles that we want to bring into the main set of exercises to see how they can be used in a creative way to create certain movements and how they can be cultivated to become more adaptable, stronger. Let your hands drop down by sides, turn your hands palm forwards. And again, the arms simply rotate, but this time as you're weighted. So we've got two movements here that we did in the previous set of rotations. Movements. We've got the movement of the weight combined with this rotation in our arms. The bird folds its wings. And then from the forward position going into fisherman castanet. So there's an intention there, especially for people who are familiar with the set of movements. Many of the movements we do each week, each session, in the same order. So we begin to associate the name and the movement with what we're doing. And that feeds into our intention. And forwards, rolling the ball in towards your chest. So this initial set of movements that we're doing now will all be used, that forwards and backwards transfer of our weight. As you can see here, my weight goes forward. You get expansion in my legs, pushing me back, and followed, then the expansion, my lower back, and so on, pushing me forwards. Expanding through the front of the body and then contract. Expanding and contract. I'll go back to using both arms. I can only use one arm when I turn around. The chair gets in the way otherwise. Using this time to pigeon spread its wings, and between the last exercise and this one, that's the most significant change, is this expansion and contraction alternating between chest and upper back. One more time. And again, the change to the next movement, quite minimal, really. All you're going to do is leave your hands in this position, in line with your legs and your hips. Your elbows still go out a little bit, so you've still got the expansion, contraction in chest and upper back. And as you come forwards, the chest contracting, pushes your hands forward, and your elbows come into line behind your arms. One more time. And again, change to the next movement, relatively straightforward. This time your elbows don't go out. Make a loose fist with your hands. And so now it's a bit more active in the arm. The pushing wave, the arm doesn't really extend out. But here, if you think about your elbow as you go forward, just let the angle of your elbow become very shallow. At the same time, there's a rotation all the way down to your arm. Different movements, subtle changes, different movements to different changes to the internal patterns of movement, the sense of the flow and the energy, subtle changes in fascia, muscle and tendon, ligament. One more time, going forwards. Open your fingers, and this time as you come back again, chest opening, hands winding out and in front of your hips, and then back to the pressing movement. Try not to concentrate just on your chest. Feel what's also happening, in particular in the upper part of your back. Just once more, coming back. Turn your hands palm down. Turn. That moves your hands across. Ease forward. Let your arms extend a little bit. Begin to turn the other way and draw back in. Expanding, contracting, and go in the other direction. Expanding and contracting. Polishing the table. One more time. Just let your arms rest for a moment. So all of those last movements are based on this alternating focus of our weight from feet to hips, from hips to feet. This wave-like movement, forwards and backwards, moving our body forward. But gravity works through the whole of our body. Just because there's an emphasis on, say, feet or hips or whatever, doesn't mean it's given up on the rest of you. So gravity is constantly there all the way through our body. So if we sit in a position where we've got, say, a third of our weight in our feet, and obviously the rest going down through lower back, hips, buttocks, and so on, then even if we don't move, we have the potential for those waves to be produced. And it's not just forwards and backwards, but the very act of sinking gives us a bit of energy for the upward expanding movement. So, you know, you up to a bit taller and so on and so forth. Now bringing your hands around in front of you as though you're cradling a ball, expanding and that. So this means that as your hands go up, there's a slight sense of your feet and your hips being part of the movement, wave expanding upwards and then downwards. Filling your body and empty. Filling with perhaps a sense of a fresher energy and just letting the more stagnant energy drain away. One more time. And then turn your hands out, changing the shape, same energy, but now through the image, if you like, of the bird in flight, the wild goose. And then easing forwards, your hands crossing in front of your knees and parting the clouds. So the movements all share common dynamics, common principles. And yet each movement is also a pretty much unique expression of certain pathways of movement, shall we call them, through the body. And I'm using the term movement, but you talk about energy or momentum or flow. Now, bring your hands back down and go back to the first of these exercises, rooting down. And then the wild goose. Then parting. And back to rooting down. So when we do these exercises in sequence, we can start to get a sense of the changes that produce different movements. Do one more round of this. But try and keep that awareness of subtle change within your body as we change now to dragon flaps to start in the sky, arms hanging down, just on one side of the body, focusing on the expansion and contraction there. If you're familiar with this feeling of releasing, of letting go, that too becomes part of the movement, particularly I would say, a bit more obvious perhaps, with the downward movement. Sometimes an idea presented is that the tension, the tightness in your body drains downwards into the ground. The dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Small. Your hands around and just doing the one movement for the moment, pressing up, feeling what I would describe as a lengthening and then a contraction through my back and spine. The same thing, pushing up. So just see how you experience this in your back. And then alternating that with the sideways movement, so a slightly different sensation in your back. Next time, when we start to push out sideways, I want you to turn just a little bit in the center of your body so that rather than sort of like straight out at 90 degrees to the way that you're facing, you turn, the whole of your body turns, and that changes the direction of your arms and then back. And on the other side, expanding from that area and back. And then pushing out to the sides. Now we have pushing in four directions. Final time, pushing out. And as your hands reach that extended point, just push one foot out on the heel, knees slightly bent, easing forwards. Careful not to strain in your back or your leg. Hips dropping back, drawing your arms over. Scooping the sea and looking at the sky. One more time. Always will follow this up with, it's almost a sort of the opposite movement in a way, a rise and expanding movement upwards and forwards on the diagonal. This is grasping the tiger's ears. More time. Change to the other side. And notice, is there a difference between one side and another? You might find it easier or worse on one side or another. if we can just identify what is going on within the body, we're more likely to be able to cultivate those more skillful, more useful qualities. But we have to have a starting point for that cultivation. So I'm changed into grasping the tiger's ears. One more time. Just come back. Notice how the sitting feels now. There's no difference between what you felt at the start of the session and what you're feeling after half an hour or so of moving with that sense of deliberate conscious intention. So we're going to move from the seated position to the standing position, looking to apply the same principles. Obviously, it's going to be different when we do this because we're not going to have the chair there. So we're going to be a little bit more reliant on that internal structure, that sense of what we might choose to call internal strength. And internal strength is a quality in Tai Chi that really come from the martial side. It's strength isn't a great term, not a great interpretation of the term, because we often have this image in our culture of strength being tight muscles, bulging muscles, and so on and so forth. But this is a strength more related to the qualities of water, say. There's a saying in Tai Chi that outside there should be the softness of cotton, and inside the hardness of steel. And that can be a useful image. It doesn't feel quite as abrupt a change as that. I'm not sure exactly where we can draw a line between inner and outer when we're talking within the body. But the quality that we're looking for is, Chinese term is sun. If you get a balloon and you push your fingers into the balloon, you'll meet greater and greater resistance, but it would never feel hard. It wouldn't be like trying to stick your fingers into a hard wall or something like that. And that's a useful image, I think, for sun. And of course, within that image of sun, we could go back to something I was talking about earlier about that allowing that feeling of compression in hips, buttocks, lower back can actually produce the movement forwards or upwards, and the same thing with your feet. So the sense of internal strength is very much bound up with this idea of sun. And before we stand, rubbing your hands together, tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. On the shoulder, your arm, the other side, upper part of the chest. Belly. and flex. Okay, and pushing your heels up. This is just to get the muscles of your legs working. When we've been sitting down for a while, they can stiffen up. And of course, that can be quite difficult then coming to standing. So this will help to get the blood circulating through them. And then pushing up and circling your knees around. So now, hopefully you can feel the movement back into your hips. And back the other way. So standing, and we want to try and make sense of the idea of internal strength and make use of it. So if you've ever seen, sometimes you can see in, like inflatable structures, sometimes chairs or maybe there's something in the town centre or something like that. I suppose a good example might be a bouncy castle, but when it's inflated, it's actually being supported in a way that we might describe as sung, with that sort of elasticity, that springiness. So it's a simple enough idea. It's difficult to achieve, of course, and it's one of the ongoing cultivations, I think, that we engage in Tai Chi. But it opens up the possibility that we're able to stand again without that tightness, without that stiffness in the body that becomes so habitual. Another example of something might be water, and with water we know kind of intuitively that if we're in water and if we can sort of like loosen up a little bit, then the water's more likely to support us. So this idea that we have this potential for the strength and something we can gain confidence in is something that can impact quite strongly on our daily lives. As always, it's a tricky process, and the transition from one to another can be quite difficult because essentially we're asking ourselves to, if you like, to relax rather than to stiffen up. And if we haven't gained some sense of confidence in this quality of strong, this internal strength, then actually what we're going to find is that our body simply won't relax because there's that very understandable reluctance to fall over. But again, we can take from the chair, if you began to notice what was going on in the chair, that there were these moments when you didn't just collapse when you're able to release. We can build on that, but always remember, it can be helpful and it can be quite interesting as well, not just helpful but interesting to maybe stand next to a wall or just lightly touching the wall or a chair or something like that, so that you've got the confidence coming from that. A bit like if you took somebody down to a swimming pool who wasn't comfortable in the water, a bit like me really, then you could take them to the swimming pool and get them to hold on to the bars, and they're more likely to be able to relax in the water and then appreciate the buoyancy of the water. And even if you don't feel that you need that, sometimes it's worth doing that because I think sometimes it reveals that we're still holding tightness, still holding stiffness. Swim isn't a magical quality. It's not going to just support us under any circumstances. Gravity is still there. So we need to think about our physical structure. You want your feet below your hips, hip width apart, not too close together because then your bits of you are overhanging. And just from this position, rocking your weight forwards and backwards. This is an exercise where you may feel that just having your fingers on a wall is helpful. It's a bit trial and error because what will happen is you go a bit too far and maybe have to take a step or something like that, and so on and so forth. But just see, if I illustrate this with this pole, in theory, in practice, it's a lot more difficult, but in theory, I could find a place, a position for this pole where gravity was pulling straight down through it and it would just stay there even if I let it go. You can see it's difficult. There's all sorts of factors involved in this. What we're doing at the moment is this. We're going from side to side and we're looking to see if we can just identify this spot. Again, it's a simple idea, one that is actually quite difficult to sustain. So this is an ongoing practice to remind ourselves and to re-establish that point of equilibrium. I'm not going to call it a point of balance. I'm going to call it a point of equilibrium, where rather than pulling us forwards or pulling us backwards, gravity is working down through our body, pulling us into our feet. Once we've had a sense for that, we can further refine that. And if you're not there already, you bring your weight just slightly forwards, and this almost to the point where you're about to take a step. I'm going to come closer so you can see this. And you may find when you do that, you're beginning to stiffen up in your shoulders. Try not to do that, but rather, once again, allowing gravity to work by drawing your hips back slightly. And so we're slightly forward with quite a lot of energy, but we're still quite grounded. And again, beginning to feel that that tightness in the shoulder, back, or wherever we begin to feel it, can have a chance to escape our body occasionally. But before that happens physically, I think more important to realize odd glimpses, suddenly a hip loosens or shoulder drops or something like that, and just for a moment we think, oh, that's nice, I'm still supported, but of course the old habit comes back. But we remind ourselves of those moments when we can really feel and appreciate that support coming from within the body. Then letting your hips drop back a little bit more, so your center of gravity drops a little bit more, and then pushing up. The dropping of our center of gravity is rooting down. The rooting down and Sung are closely related to each other. Sung, regrettably, is not some kind of magical technique. It's a very important part of the practice, very versatile part of the practice. But even if you're quite soft in your body, if you were holding something heavy right up above your head, it will still be quite a strain. The lower your center of gravity, the more stable you are, and that also encourages us to release tightness and stiffness. Bring your hands around in front of you and pushing up your body, expanding and contracting. Expanding, filling up again, is a term I used earlier, emptying. Once we've got a sense of qualities like rooting down, some, however you kind of care to label them, but when there are very real physical experiences to relate to there, just as if you felt the buoyancy of the water, then you're more likely to find them again. That memory of those qualities feeds into our intention. And again, the instruction goes out to the body, find that sense of equilibrium, look for Sung, and so on and so forth. One more time. And then just shake out. So intention, needs something to focus on, a memory, an image, an idea, in the first place. So it's some kind of experience. But once we've had that experience, then intention can guide us back into that experience. From the parallel position, turn one foot out, step forward to the other, keeping the width of your step, length about the same as the width, maybe a bit longer. And now instead of up and down, the movement is forwards and backwards. But again, we're filling and emptying from one foot to another. And so we're beginning to be able to maintain equilibrium, beginning to be able to maintain sung, the root, whilst we're moving. So this is an important exercise. Again, none of these qualities enable us to ignore the laws of physics. So I can go here and I've got I'm at blue. I can go right out. No, I can't, because gravity is still going to pull me over. So an awareness of how gravity is working through your body, an awareness of the environment around you and the impact that it has on you is very, very important. So your attention, your intention, so these various aspects of mind are very much an ongoing part of this practice. Going back into your right foot, just raising the front toes and get more of the weight into the back foot and then into the front foot, push the knee forward, back knee forward, sinking down, so that more and more you're able to find those qualities that we've been sort of gradually building up over one leg rather than just two legs, and we've just done over two legs rather than the chair, and so on and so forth. And then just seeing if you can step in. And again, you could do this exercise next to a wall. You could even have your fingers on the wall if that helps. Again, building an awareness that we can do this, building a sense of confidence that this is available to us. So try that on the other side from the parallel stance. The other foot forwards, transferring your weight. Feeling again that sense of compression and expansion that we noticed in the chair. The chair was between hips and feet. Here is between one foot, one leg, and another. And then raising your toes and heel. And stepping in and out. The empty leg without the weight, expanding and contracting. And then see if you can just take a few steps forwards or backwards. Changing direction. Okay. Now, this will exercise to bring the upper body back into the picture. So where we want to be aware not only of these qualities, but also the movement. It's always quite challenging. Start with your weight forwards. Coming into your back foot, just let your body turn, your hands sweep around and up in a gentle circle, going forwards, bringing your hands down across the front hip. And what we're going to do, we combine this with the stepping. So you go into the front foot, push the back knee forward, bring foot forward. If you haven't got room in front, do this going back. Take a step forward. And again, we do the same thing here, turning them back. And then you can do it as a little stepping sequence in whichever direction you wish, coming through, raising the arms, maybe raising your knee if you've got that confidence, but don't force that on yourself. This little figure of eight movement, like the infinity sign used in maths and physics, being traced by your fingertips, but not losing that sense of equilibrium, root, sung, the alignment of your body with the pull of gravity and so on. I'm going to change direction. Now, this encourages us to become a bit more intuitive about these things. We start off with technical details, but like a lot of things that to begin with, we have to think quite detailed about. As we get used to them, if we practice them, they become a lot more intuitive. And this is where, you know, these qualities, these principles will begin to seep into our daily lives. Again, you know, you don't have to go forwards and backwards. If you want the wall behind you, if you go from side to side. Stepping out, planting the foot down. Just confident that if you did have a little wobble, all you've got to do is just lean back against the wall, and don't see that you somehow failed if that happens. Everybody experiences that, and sometimes you might find it you get a bit wobbly. Maybe you can just recover from that, and that's actually quite useful, isn't it? Bring in your feet parallel. Okay, so go back to your chairs. An important element in practicing Tai Chi is that we're reminding ourselves of, of, of these qualities, whether seated or standing. They often go against our habitual patterns of posture and of movement. So it's good to practice these ideas regularly, just so you remind yourself that that tightness in your shoulders isn't permanent. It's not a prison sentence, shall we say. Now, coming back to the basic sitting position, letting your hands drop down to your sides. The final exercise, embrace tiger, return to the mountain. Your arms coming around. And again, how do we come back? So I said then, you know, sometimes we can have the little wobble and find our stability again. And what does it take to do that? What is it that leads us back to the mountain? And that those qualities of Tai Chi. The image of the mountain, is it some kind of sensation in some part of your body? And these are useful things to know. The quality of mind or body or both. And what's the effect on your mind when you do come back? This is an art that doesn't really, in the end, distinguish between what we think of as mind, what we think of as body. One more time. And open your eyes. Lovely. Thank you very much, as always, everybody, for joining in and watching and so on. And enjoy the rest of your day, and hope to catch up with you.
Thank you. You too.